program after a vote of 85 to 63 earlier this morning. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. We'll also talk more about the vouchers and what we can expect with Josh Cowan, author and professor of education policy at Michigan State University.
I'm Frank Billingsley. Will hear the latest installment of Friends of Frank, where I talk with water wastewater deputy practice leader of HATH, Engineer Lance McLeod, about the Texas water crisis.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, questions, and concerns. Give us a call, 713-440-8870, or send us an email, talk@hellohouston.org.
All that and more right here on Hello Houston, right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump is blasting Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell for not cutting interest rates. NPR's Scott Horsley reports it's not the first time Trump has criticized him.
The European Central Bank lowered interest rates today, and President Trump would like the Federal Reserve to take similar action. Of course, political leaders in Europe have not launched a trade war, which threatens to raise prices for their citizens. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell warned in a speech this week that Trump's new tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. That's discouraging the Fed from cutting interest rates any further. This is not the first time Trump has criticized the Fed for keeping borrowing costs elevated. He says Powell's termination, quote, cannot come fast enough. Powell has insisted he plans to serve out his term as Fed chairman, which runs through next spring. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Trump administration is hoping to fast-track asylum cases in immigration court. As NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports, a new memo encourages judges to drop cases without a hearing.
The memo sent to employees of the Executive Office for Immigration Review laid out a directive to drop, quote, legally deficient asylum cases. That's the office that oversees immigration judges inside the Justice Department. The memo means that a judge could turn away an asylum application without holding a hearing. This is an effort to try to reduce the 4 million case backlog in immigration courts. 1.5 million cases are asylum requests. But immigration lawyers say the move could hurt asylum seekers who go through the legal system without a lawyer to help them. They say the process is already complicated. A hearing is an opportunity to help explain their case beyond what asylum seekers might know to write in the paper forms. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are sitting down with French President Emmanuel Macron and European diplomats in Paris today to try to get closer to a peace deal or ceasefire in Ukraine. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports a Ukrainian team is joining them this afternoon.
The Europeans and Americans remain far apart in their goals and expectations on how to bring the war to an end. Considering him a pariah, no Western European leader has spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin in years. But President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff has met with Putin 3 times recently as the U.S. pursues deals with the Kremlin. The Europeans remain skeptical, pointing out that Putin has not budged on his maximalist demands and continues to bomb Ukrainian cities nightly. The U.S. recently broke with its G7 allies and refused to condemn a Russian attack on the Ukrainian city of Sumy on Palm Sunday that killed more than 30 people. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
Wall Street's trading in mixed territory at this hour. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. The controversial bill that would establish a school voucher program in Texas received preliminary approval from the Texas House early this morning. The measure quickly passed out of the Senate in February, becoming the most anticipated bill this session. Representative Caroline Harris Davila, a Round Rock Republican, spoke out in support of the proposal, which she says prioritizes students with special needs.
I know with the special needs funding in the bill, it kind of describes if they've got a tutor or a therapist, there are special guidelines in place where those people have to be licensed. You know, we want to make sure that this money is going to people who are going to really help those kids the most, that we know who they are, they're licensed.
The bill still has a few short hurdles to clear, which could involve the Texas House and Senate getting together to work out any differences they have on the measure before sending it to Governor Greg Abbott's desk. Airbnb, VRBO, and other short-term rental properties in Houston are now regulated by the city. Houston City Council today approved rules requiring them to register with the city and allowing the registration to be revoked if renters repeatedly commit certain crimes. Councilmember Abby Kamen supported a last-minute amendment targeting owners of multiple short-term rentals. It allows the city to revoke all registrations if 3 or more units have problem within a 2-year period.
We're trying to narrowly tailor this while giving the city some leverage. And we're trying to tread as lightly as possible while still addressing the concerns and needs of the city of Houston.
Owners who fail to register with the city or otherwise violate the rules are subject to a misdemeanor charge with a fine of up to $500. The rules take effect in 180 days. It's 77 degrees with a high near 85 today. Tonight is cloudy with a low near 71. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Hello there.
How is everybody today?
It's Thursday. I had no idea what day of the week it was this morning when I got up. That's how the week has been going.
That worries me a little bit.
I also want to remind you, if you want to see how frazzled we are, you can watch us live on
Speak for yourself. I feel great.
YouTube.com/Houston Public Media. Or, of course, you can find us on our website at HoustonPublicMedia.org and just click that big orange banner that Frank's so proud of talking about.
Yeah, I love that big orange banner.
I know. You can also call in with your questions, concerns, suggestions, whatever during the show on any of our topics, 713-440-8870, or you can email us, talk@hellohouston.org. Before we get into the show and all of that, I'm really getting into the weather, but I'm getting very worried it's going to leave me.
You know what? It was beautiful this morning.
Yeah.
It was like coffee on the patio.
Spoiled.
I know. Well, you're right. It's going to get breezy this afternoon, and we're going to see this front start to edge into the state, which comes through here on Sunday, which is Easter. So the best chance of rain now, 60%, is on Easter Sunday.
Early in the day, later in the day? Say
all
later.
Day.
Oh,
and you know what they say, if it rains on Easter Sunday, it's going to rain for the next 10 Sundays.
It's kind of like the Groundhog Day of weather.
Kind of, because these systems tend to be a week apart. That's what it is. So, I know, we get into a weekend weather, rainy weekend weather pattern. We may keep it for a while.
Good, then that'll put off me having to get out and do exercise on the weekends.
But I love a rainy weekend.
Well, once in a while.
Yeah, 10 in a row.
They get pretty old after a while.
So now you can keep score at home and see, are there 10 weekends of rain now?
I know, we're going to keep score for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Also on today's show, yesterday we were talking about school vouchers. Got a lot of you excited, a lot of comments coming in. So coming up this hour, we're going to talk with author, educator, and expert on that very issue. That's coming up in just a little bit. But right now, starting off with our headlines is Celeste.
And guess what it is?
I have no idea.
School vouchers.
Here we go.
So
it's
obviously
a big deal right now in the state. It's huge.
And because it really would change the landscape of our education system. I mean, this really is very interesting and a very interesting time for educations and educators. We've been monitoring, like we've been talking about, the Texas legislature and a few important bills regarding education. Those House Bill 2 and Senate Bill 2. Well, yesterday we had a very fruitful conversation right here on Hello Houston about SB 2, which is the bill regarding school vouchers. The Texas House voted 86 to 63 earlier this morning. And to better understand, again, we're going to have coming up, a leading expert in the nation, Josh Cowan, to talk to us about that. But we also want to hear what you have to say. We're taking your thoughts on these latest developments. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. So supporters say vouchers provide more options for families. Opponents say they cut into public school funding and enrollment. And how it works essentially is priority eligibility in the program. So the House approved this morning would go to families that have low income and children with disabilities. And then the House must take a final vote. It's a formality, and then the House and Senate must hash out differences in the two versions of the bill, including how much money each participating family would receive per student.
And to just clarify that, so Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 2 are two separate bills.
Correct.
But they both deal with schooling. And
Right.
so I think a lot of people are getting it confused. SB 2 is about vouchers. HB 2 is about funding. Okay.
Right. And HB 2 as well was passed yesterday after nearly 3 hours. And again, that's not the voucher one. That's to raise funding for public schools by $7.7 billion.
I'm assuming our governor had a comment on some of this?
Yes, our governor did. Actually, clearly this was a big win for him in both areas, in both SB2 and HB2. But speaking specifically on SB2, which is the voucher bill, Governor Abbott commented on X. He said, "This is an extraordinary victory for thousands of parents who have advocated for more choices when it comes to the education of their children." We also heard from, opposition, which is Representative Chris Turner, Democrat from Grand Prairie. He said, "Are we really willing to trade an efficient system of public, free schools that serve all children for an inefficient system of private, expensive schools that will only serve a privileged few?" Again, we're inviting you to join the conversation. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
And to complicate matters more, if I remember what Senator Betancourt said when he was on the show, is that SB2 and HB2 will more than likely combine in committee once they've both been approved to make a single schooling bill.
Well,
Right.
from the way I understand it, the funding bill is about $7.7 billion, whereas the voucher part of that would be $1 billion of that. So we have money to fund the schools, and we're putting money aside to fund these vouchers. One of the big issues has been, what if that voucher money is $2 billion next year and $4 billion in 3 years? I mean, what happens? How does this continue to escalate?
You're right. And the other part of it is the House bill, which is HB2, which is regarding funding. A lot of advocates are basically saying, okay, great, you gave it, you put $7.7 billion dollars towards this. However, we haven't had an increase in public school funding since 2019, and truly, per student through HB2 would be getting about $400 per student.
Right.
Whereas it would actually take around $1,300 for each student to get districts back in the same level of spending power.
Wow.
Well,
So there's still we're still not quite there.
Well, let me put one more fly in your ointment.
Go for it.
Okay. We were talking just in the last week about schools needing security on campus, that's a requirement, but they might have to use drones. With all of these billions of dollars, why are we not funding that first and foremost over vouchers?
I did see that on X. A parent was saying, the money you're spending, shouldn't our first priority be keeping our kids safe in school?
Yes.
Then you can work. But you know what? There's a lot to this. And so coming up in the show, we do have a leading expert that's going to help us understand and help you too.
This.
I have a lot of questions for this guy.
But I'm sure you do too. So give us a call, 713-440-8870. Start queuing up because I know there's going to be a lot of questions on this, and we want to make sure we have time to get to your questions.
And if you're a teacher or even an administrator or principal who agrees with school vouchers, I would love to hear your opinion.
Yeah,
yes,
we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so far we haven't had one.
Moving on to another topic, the Houston Food Bank, as I'm sure many of you know, helps feed approximately 1 million people annually across 17 counties in southeast Texas. But now, due to federal funding cuts at multiple agencies, the nonprofit will likely have to cut back on how many people it serves. According to Reuters, food banks across the country have lost about $1 billion due to funding cuts and paused by President Donald Trump's administration, his department of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So should DOGE mess with Houston Food Bank? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Initially, I would say
said a
no.
lot,
Well,
Frank.
we have Houston Restaurant Weeks, which helps the Houston Food Bank.
Katie
But it
was on the
can't-
show
Yes,
last week, and
it's-
this week.
and it's been extended to a lot
whole
of weeks,
month. And it raises a huge amount of money for the Houston Food Bank.
but not enough.
Not enough. They do need that funding. According to the Houston Food Bank's president, the loss of funding will account for about 15% of the food bank's yearly budget. Federal funding to the Houston Food Bank is provided by several agencies, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. So it's tricky, very tricky.
It is. And we actually have a call on from Debbie from Pearland, who wants to talk about vouchers.
Of course.
That's right.
Hi, Debbie.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Thank you for allowing me a moment of your time.
Thank you for joining us.
I know that vouchers have been a successful situation in many states, but the circumstances of this particular program are probably going to cause us more problems as a general society.
Why?
Well, private schools and charter schools, well, each child should have an equal amount, no matter where they go.
Agreed.
No matter where they go.
Agreed.
And that is, to me, a problem. Secondly, we really need to be talking about the quality of education as opposed to the money. Because the last 3 years, Abbott has withheld funding from the public schools, which has caused a shortage in their funds. We really need to support public schools as equally as we support private schools. I worked in public education for 25 years, 24 years, and in private for 4 years. So I really have a background on what's happening here.
Well, Debbie, keep listening. Coming up in our next segment, we've got one of the leading experts on school vouchers, and hopefully we can address a lot of this. And if you have another question, join us back in the conversation at 713-440-8870. Thanks, Debbie, for calling.
Thank you, and you have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Neelam from Sugarland also has a thought on this topic, so let's go to him right now. Hello, Neelam.
Oh, hi. I have two children at private schools. I'm from Sugarland. We have a long commute, and I'm against the voucher.
Why?
These vouchers, the access to these private schools or better options are not an option for everybody. Not everybody can drive and take kids to these private schools and have an option. This will only serve privileged families who have the time and the money to get to these private schools and get the admission with, legacy or the connections that they have. So this should not be taken out of the public pot. We need to support public schools, the general society. We pay taxes for a reason. They need to stay local and serve the local community.
Amen. I agree with that.
Neelam, if you don't mind me asking, or if you don't want to say, you don't have to, roughly how much do you pay for private school?
About $30,000 a year per kid.
Mm-hmm. So $10,000 would be just what I've been calling a coupon for you, and give you a slight discount. But somebody who can't afford that money, the $10,000 is not going to do it, right?
Nope. And I don't. I would not feel comfortable taking that out of the public pot to support my own financial interest. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Neelam, thank you very much for calling. As I said to the last caller, stay listening. We're going to have quite a heated discussion, I think, coming up with our next guest. And if you have more questions, rejoin us at 713-440-8870. Thank you for calling. It is going to be interesting. I can see the little light from where our phones are lighting up and lighting up. People have thoughts and feelings on this topic.
Yes.
Including me. I can't wait for this conversation.
Frank has been going full steam. He woke up this morning with his vitamins, so he's ready to go. Quickly, before we wrap up this segment, I just want to mention something that I think is really nice is that Bush Airport Terminal E is going to be renamed after the late U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee.
I love that. It could be
nice.
Terminal Lee.
Oh,
Right?
that's actually really good.
I like
Frank
that.
brought it in
I
today.
loved her. I know people could get snarky about her, but I really liked Sheila Jackson.
But
Lee.
she's one of those politicians, wherever you lived in the country, you knew who Sheila Jackson Lee was.
Yes.
We
There you
deserve
go.
to honor her in our own backyard.
I think that's wonderful.
That's right. And coming up on Hello Houston, we'll take a deeper dive into tax-funded school voucher programs with University of Michigan professor and author Josh Cowan. And we're also taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7. You've been listening and you have heard that we are talking about two major bills that are currently moving forward to being a reality, which would change the landscape of education in our state right here in Texas. Every conversation continues here because of you. And that matter because public media funding is at risk, not just from one place, but from all over. Cuts at the national level and economic pressures are making it harder to sustain independent journalism. But Houston Public Media is different. We're funded mostly by you. That's why this moment matters. Now is the time to stand strong for local programming right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman here with Frank Billingsley.
Hi, Celeste.
Hi, Frank.
You know, conversations, whether they're about school bills or our city or bike lanes or whatever we're talking about, are made possible because people like you invest in it. Your gift right now protects your access to these kind of stories, helping you better understand our city. So make your gift right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And we love bringing you conversations that are relevant, that are real and truly rooted in this city. That's what Hello Houston does, and that's what makes it different. If you've ever thought, I'm glad I heard that, or I want to call in, this is your moment to give back right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Celeste, I just got a text from a listener. I've been listening every day. I absolutely love your show, and especially today's topic. And that is what it's all about. So set up a monthly gift. That's the best way to support what we're doing on this station. Monthly support lets us plan ahead and stay strong. So that's what's important about a monthly. So we can be here no matter what the future holds. Please go to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
This is the great thing about public media and about this show. It's available to everyone, for everyone. And not everyone has the ability to make a gift now, and that's okay. So I'm asking you, if you can make a gift to the station our community relies on, do that now. Give for you and give for your neighbors at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
So if we all work to protect what Houston Public Media has become, we'll have a greater chance of managing times of financial uncertainty. And that's what we have right now, our times of financial uncertainty. Because of those potential cuts to funding for public media, your gift right now is even more vital. Please give at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And here's the reality. Public media funding is never guaranteed, and that's why we rely on you. Community support is the most reliable thing we have. Help protect your newsroom at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or give us a call, 888-909-0887.
And if you've already made a gift, thank you so much. But if you haven't, we're here. Make your extra gift right now, houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
When you hear a story on Houston Public Media, you know it's been carefully reviewed and put together by journalists who take the time to get it right.
Your support helps keep our reporting clear, balanced, and factual.
Because when you have all the facts, you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, and your future.
Protect the news that you rely on. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap. Meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com. Support comes from Houston Grand Opera, opening the 25-26 season with Porgy and Bess, featuring music by George Gershwin, blending jazz, blues, and spirituals. Select dates available now at hgo.org. Support comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, committed to strengthening the state's workforce and its communities through safety and wellness grants and education initiatives. More at texasmutual.com/community impact. Support comes from LaPorte CPAs and Business Advisors, an independent accounting and business advisory firm serving clients for more than 75 years, with 190 employees across offices in Houston, New Orleans, and other locations. More information at laporte.com. Support comes from the Houston Zoo, presenting its annual Feast with the Beasts. Cuisine from a number of Houston's diverse eateries, animal experiences, live music, and more. May 2nd. More at houstonzoo.org. Support comes from the Inspirity Invitational, presented by United Healthcare, bringing Nicholas, Player, Trevino, Watson, Annika, and friends to town for the Folds of Honor Greats of Golf. One day only, May 3rd. More information at inspirityinvitational.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, hello, hello.
We usually do our little pleasantries here. We got a lot to talk about, so let's just get to our first guest.
Yep. So we've been discussing Senate Bill 2, the school voucher legislation that recently passed. The bill creates an education savings account, or EAS, which would allow parents to use $10,000 of public funds per student toward private school tuition. If the House approves the voucher bill, it will head back to the Senate. And so we're curious, what type of effect would this bill have on the state of education here in Texas? And joining us now is Josh Cowan, a professor of education policy at Michigan State University. He explores how tax-funded school voucher programs have damaged education equity and how education privatization is failing students and exacerbating income inequality. In his recent book, The Privateers, How Billionaires Created a Culture War and Sold School Vouchers. Josh, welcome to Hello Houston.
Appreciate you having me.
Josh, it's great to have you with us. I want to remind our audience, if you have any questions about this topic and want to join the conversation, 713-440-8870. Josh, let me just start with, before we get into the rich history of all of this, where are we at in the state of Texas right now after what's happened overnight? How are you feeling about where we're going?
So unfortunately it's a bad day for Texas kids and families. I mean, these voucher bills, the vast majority of vouchers go to kids who are already in private school. So if you're in private school today, your parents may be getting a check at some point in the next couple of years. For about the 25% or so of voucher users who do transfer from public to private schools, they're mostly only able to find access to schools that are subprime, not particularly great. Test scores tend to show that, and it becomes just another way to privatize what's been a long-standing public investment in communities and families.
I want to remind folks that the number here, 713-440-8870, if you'd like to join the conversation.
Hey, Josh, it's Frank Billingsley. So a voucher program, which is what we're talking about in Texas, very different than an education savings account. Can you explain?
Actually, they're the same thing. So an education savings account is just one type of voucher.
Well, my understanding is an ESA goes straight to the parents and can be used for more than just tuition, whereas a voucher program goes to the school.
No, historically it's been a mix of both. The key piece here is the private school tuition piece. You do hear a lot of messaging from the voucher lobby trying to make a big distinction between the two, but ESAs are not vouchers like hammers aren't tools. ESAs are one type of voucher. The fact that parents can spend money on things other than tuition is certainly a newer a newer flavor of these things, but the key, the private school tuition piece still makes up the vast majority of spending of taxpayers in these types of situations.
We had a caller on a few moments ago, and she started her call by saying that in other states, vouchers have been successful, but she wasn't in favor of the one here in Texas. Is there truth to that?
I'm not sure of what measure you would use to call vouchers successful, unless the measure is, are we going to give taxpayer dollars to existing private school families? If that's your standard, then certainly vouchers have done a good job providing subsidies for existing choices already.
So, Josh, you have mentioned how the measurement of voucher programs in other states have not been successful. Given that information, why do you think Governor Abbott would want to pass school vouchers or this program?
Well, I don't know what's in these folks' hearts and minds, but I do know that there are a handful of billionaires that have been spending a lot of money in Texas and in other states to get this thing done. The pattern that you saw in Texas with a Pennsylvania-based billionaire named Jeff Yass spending heavily in your state, Betsy DeVos from my home state, billionaire there, the Koch organizations, they have done this in every other state that's passed vouchers in the last 3 years: Arkansas, Iowa, Louisiana, Tennessee most recently. And it's the same approach each time. It's spend a lot of money heavily in Republican primaries to get out rural Republicans who oppose these things, because there aren't any private schools in rural communities for kids to use. And it's taken a little more time in Texas, but that same playbook that they followed elsewhere seems to have borne some fruit here in Texas.
Hey, Josh, I have a concern that if the state is putting money into private schools, which this is what's going to happen, that the state will then have a piece of it, that they'll be able to influence what is taught in those schools, what students can go to those schools, what teachers can be accredited or not accredited, what books are in the library, DEI policy, transgender policy. It's almost like what you see with Trump and Harvard right now, saying, if you don't do what I say, we're not going to give you this voucher.
No, that's a good point. That's a good example of what, the current legislation that passed does provide language that says that private schools still get to do the choosing. It's, that's the big misnomer, is that this gives parents the choice. It actually still gives the private schools the ability to choose their students. But otherwise, it also says, the state can't interfere with what private schools want to do. Well, that's true for the current legislation, but we're seeing with Trump and these colleges right now, and administrations change, and presidents come and go. And so certainly once you start to take taxpayer subsidies, you do have to be prepared at times to make some adjustments if you run afoul with what whoever's in charge doesn't like. And you're seeing this play out with Trump and these colleges right now. Same thing could happen in Texas private schools.
We are speaking with Josh Cohen, who is the author of Privateers: How Billionaires Create a Culture War and Sold School Vouchers. We're interested in what you think, your comments, thoughts, even questions for Josh. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Josh, you mentioned earlier that 25% of students actually move from public school to private school. Of those 25% that make that jump, do we know how many are actually come from low-income families or actually have some kind of disability?
Well, in the old days, the answer used to be all of them, because they made very firm caps on who could use these programs. But that has not existed in the more recent programs. The typical voucher user today is wealthier than students in their counties. They are more likely to be white, and they're more likely to have no special needs assignments to them. It's true that the Texas bill creates an eligibility list to try to change some of that, to give money first to lower income kids and then special education kids and so on. But it doesn't change the fundamental issue of which is that the private schools get to do the choosing. So it's not enough to simply say, well, we're going to give these kids the money. You have to find a place for them to spend it, and that's the real issue, and that's the thing that keeps these from being really used heavily by lower-income families.
We have a call from Ivana Moore from the Heights. Ivana, what's your question for Josh?
Actually, it was more of a comment than a question, but thank you so much for this wonderful discussion and platform, and thank you for allowing all kinds of expressions on this complicated topic. For me, as a teacher and a promoter of the arts, I have encountered in the last 3 years students that I teach with great potential and brilliance. But unfortunately, they live in areas where, of course, they are subject to the public schools. And the public schools, as we well know, in the poor areas are not as efficient and as prioritized as other areas. So many of these parents, I teach 2 classes of 18 children, and we have about 800 and something children registered in our program at the Christ the King Catholic Church on Main Street in the Heights, and it's primarily Hispanic families, lower income. Well, they have expressed the great desire of being able to send their children to a school that would be appropriate for their, faith and for their academic potential. And so many of them that I've just discussed with a little bit, they, would like to have the possibility of, if not a voucher, something that would allow them a little bit more freedom and to be able to, you can transfer to other schools, that's true, you can apply and transfer, but it's not an easy process. And,
Ivana, I'm going to jump in right here because we only have Josh for so long, but I appreciate your thoughts on this topic. Josh, let me ask you this. One of the stories that goes around when we talk about school vouchers is that it will end up depleting the funding for public schools. It will harm public schools. Those in favor of vouchers say, oh, no, it's spreading the wealth around. What's the reality here?
Yeah, so the reality is, at the end of the day, states can't afford to pay for 2 sectors of education. And so where the real hit to taxpayers comes is at the state level. And the state's a really important part of this funding because, as your caller suggested, some of the public schools in many outlying areas, rural areas, higher poverty areas, they don't have a lot of a tax base or a wealth base to draw on their own public funds. So the state money is a really important equalizer for them, and it's an important source of inequality when that doesn't happen, as has been the case in Texas. When you commit to paying the tuition of kids already in private school, which is what this voucher bill does, it puts a real strain on state taxpayer dollars, not just in the public schools, but you've seen in places like Arizona, roads funding, funding for corrections facilities, funding for water quality, things like that. States can't afford, in the long run, 2 sectors of education. Right now, the $1 billion price tag on your voucher bill is manageable for current taxpayers. But when that creeps up to 8, 9, 10 billion, as some of the estimates I've seen will do in the next 3 or 4 years, that's where the check's really going to come to.
Hey, Josh, do you know of any caps on tuitions for private schools? In other words, if I charge $30,000 for your kid and now you're going to get 10, and I say, well, you know what? I'm going to charge 40 because you're getting 10 and I want your 30 anyway. But now we've defeated the whole point. We've just made the school richer.
100%. So in the states that have passed these things recently or expanded them, like Arizona or Iowa, you've actually seen private schools hiking tuition up.
There you
as
go.
a result of that behavior. Now, in the old days, I don't want to sound like I keep referring to that, but that was a problem that was really well understood by good faith folks who tried to get this right, and they did put tuition caps and they did prohibit that kind of behavior. But all bets have been off for really the last 3 or 4 years, and so this is why you see these private schools jacking tuition up. They're allowed to.
Yeah.
I have a question about this from the opposite point of view. Is there an example or a story you can illustrate where vouchers have benefited the community? Is there a place where they figured out this concept and made it work?
So there are a handful of studies from Florida that have shown that when you threaten public school communities with loss of funding due to the voucher program, you've seen some very tiny upticks in the average test scores of those public schools. It tend to be lower income public schools. Now, that's something that gets pointed out a lot by the pro-voucher side, including in the debate in your state. The problem is it's about 3 times less than simply investing the impact in simply investing that money directly in the public school. So if your policy goal is to improve public schools, and God knows we have to make some improvements in our public schools, the simplest way to do that is to actually directly invest in them. It's like in very few other sort of debates or discussions would we say the best way to improve a product's quality is to simply just transfer dollars out of that area. And in any event, you have to kind of reflect at the end of the day, and this comes down to a choice in values. I don't accept the value proposition that threatening vulnerable communities with funding loss and pitting them against each other for scarce resources is moral or ethical public policy. I just don't think we should do it.
You're listening to Hello Houston. We are currently talking about school vouchers with Josh Cowan, and we have a call on the line. Daniel from East Houston. Hi, Daniel. What is your question or comment?
Yes, I would like to know, where did the $10,000 figure come from, since the state amounts that for each district per student does not even come close to that?
That's a good question. Do you? I have no idea. Do you?
Yeah, Josh, what do you think?
So the voucher dollar amount varies across states. The bill language in your state is very similar to what's been used in other states. I don't know the exact answer. Usually it's pegged to some percentage of the public school investment and or some thought process on what the state can afford in the first year. It didn't come from nowhere, but it's, for our purposes, it's more or less arbitrary.
Does seem rather random, yeah.
I'm also curious, and we may have addressed this at least on other times we've talked about the topic, but to get your point of view, when it comes to testing and holding schools accountable, there seems to be a very certain set of accountability for public schools that wouldn't necessarily translate to the private schools. Once the vouchers are in place, does that then shift at all?
No. So the private schools do, under the new legislation that got passed last night, the private schools have to take a standardized test, but they don't have to take the state standardized test. And the reason that distinction matters is that under this current really lack of accountability framework, parents are not going to be able to know whether their child is doing any better on an academic subject relative to where the kid was last year if they did leave public schools. And they're not going to be able to answer the question, how would my kid be doing this year if they had stayed in public schools? Only if the private schools had to take the same exam would we see that.
Hey, Josh, to Ernie's line of questioning here, is there any example you know of where the school system said or the state said, okay, you know what, this didn't work. We're going to take that money back or scale it back to some degree and put those funds maybe back into public education?
Yeah, so two states. One state, Illinois, sunsetted its voucher-like system last year. And then in Nebraska, they had yet to get it off the ground, but voters actually repealed the voucher law before it could take place as a quirk of Nebraska's lawmaking. Vouchers have never survived a statewide ballot initiative. They only have come to be law went through this legislative backroom wrangling that you saw last night in Texas. So two states, Illinois pulled it back after having it in place for 5 years, and then Nebraska voters actually eliminated the law themselves before the voucher bill could actually take effect.
Josh, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Before we let you go, what do you see in your crystal ball for the future of this here in Texas?
So unfortunately, I think, again, this is good news. If you're already in private school, you're on the wealthier side of your community, and your family wants that subsidy. This is going to be a boon for you. It's not good news if you're a family in public schools committed to your public school community and wants to make it work there, perhaps with some new investments and improvements.
Josh Cowan is a professor of education policy at Michigan State University and the author of The Privateers, How Billionaires Created a Culture War and Sold School Vouchers. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, Frank speaks with Lance McLeod about water and infrastructure. Stay with us. You're listening to News 88.7.
It's more important than ever to stay informed. That's why Houston Public Media delivers well-researched news that's free for everyone.
And right now, your support helps make sure it stays that way. No subscription, no paywall, just news that's here when you need it.
Give today to keep yourself and your community informed, no matter what the future holds.
Make your donation now at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, performing Sibelius's Fifth Symphony under guest conductor Dalia Stasiewska. Plus, violinist Lila Josefowicz performs Stravinsky's Violin Concerto, April 18th and 19th. Tickets at houstonsymphony.org. Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, a night of mystery and intrigue with the new season of Father Brown at 7, followed by the Sister Boniface Mysteries at 8, and Death in Paradise at 9. Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8.
Support comes from the Houston Rockets, presenting their 2025-26 season ticket memberships with access to live sports, suite availability, and opportunities for business engagement. More at rockets.com/tickets or 713-758-7300.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, welcome back to Hello Houston. Right now it's time for the latest edition of our recurring series, Friends of Frank, where I chat with some of the many people I know about the things they know or what they've been working on lately. And today we'll be playing my conversation with engineer Lance McLeod. He's a water practice leader for the infrastructure consulting firm HALF. We discuss the water crisis. I don't know if you know we have one, but we do here in Texas, and the issues surrounding our water infrastructure are serious. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here's Lance McLeod, a friend of Frank. All right, good morning. This is Frank Billingsley again with Friends of Frank here on Hello Houston. And one of my true friends is engineer Lance McLeod. He's here with us today. He is an engineer and has been an engineer for a long time working on water issues. Currently vice president with HALF, HALFF. Congratulations on the 75 years that HALF has been around in Texas. Lance is a water practice leader as an engineer with his company. And so if you have any water questions, Lance is the guy to go to. Good morning, Lance. How are you? Thanks for being on Friends of Frank.
Good morning. Happy to be here, Frank.
I'm glad you are. So let's just dive right into the water issue. If you like that pun, that was kind of a pun. Because water, you and I were talking, water by some measures now is more valuable than oil.
True. And I would say that since, of course, life needs water, it's technically always been more valuable than oil, but it's historically undervalued in this country. It drives our economy and our energy production. Water's that silent partner cornerstone of our survival and growth, which is true in Texas, the U.S., and globally.
Well, we take it for granted. We turn on a shower, the water comes out. We take the tap, and the water seems to always be there. In fact, there's always this admonishment that you're not drinking enough water. It's like indicating there's plenty of it. But there is a serious water shortage, especially in the state of Texas.
Yes, and I would define it more as we're on the cusp of a water crisis. Texas has always been a relatively dry state. On the east side of Texas, the amount of source water is not necessarily an issue, but as you move westward across the state, it definitely gets scarcer, and you end up in issues with shortage, definitely there. But our water crisis is due to an aging water infrastructure issue. A lot of our infrastructure was built in the 50s to 70s, and it's crumbling. We were losing billions of gallons in Texas per year just through leaks. And the boil water notices we see are typically stem from infrastructure failures, either at treatment facilities or other delivery systems.
Well, I know in his State of the State, Governor Abbott addressed all the leaks in South Texas. I guess that's part of what you're referring to.
Sure, but there's other issues as well. Here in the Houston region, for instance, we've had issues with overpumping. Throughout the last century, we're taking more water out of the aquifers than they could replenish. And when that happens, the aquifers compress And when that happens, the ground literally drops. We call that subsidence. And once an aquifer compresses, it does not recover. So that damage has been done, and we're trying to alleviate that.
So, and I don't want to get off that subject, but I know that most of the lakes in Texas are man-made, almost all of them. And as you said, in the 50s, especially when we were going through after the Dust Bowl of the 30s and then the drought of the 50s is when we decided to build Lake Conroe and Lake Livingston and Lake Houston and have these reservoirs of water. But is that simply not enough?
It's not enough, and we certainly are not doing much more of that. Water supply lakes are pretty much finished. There are some still in the planning stage, but for the most part, they've become, cost prohibitive now due to real estate issues and environmental mitigation concerns. We know much more about, the impact that these types of constructed facilities have on the environment. So they become a real challenge to do any more in terms of creating additional water supply reservoirs.
So we really have to fix what we have because we're not building more.
Right.
So that's the message that I get from the aqueducts that are going through subsidence and the fact that we're not building more reservoirs. And so if we don't do that, is there a X number of years where we're going to run out of water if we're not careful?
Well, let me put it this way. The bottom line is that we have 1,500 new people moving to Texas every day. That's a projection of 22 million more folks by 2070. And in the same time, we are predicting that we're going to have a decrease in our supply of water by 18%. Thirsty people are desperate people, Frank. So something needs to change.
Yeah. I'm talking to Lance McLeod of Half Engineering about our water shortages and our water issues here on Hello Houston. He's a friend of Frank for sure. So as we were just saying, if we double our population, because we're at about 28 million, so we almost double it by 2070, and the amount of water goes down by almost 20%, we're going to be in a world of hurt if we don't either find a water source or fix what we have.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I know as an engineer, you're working on fixing what we have. Let's talk about other sources of water, one being, I guess, desalination of what's out there in the Gulf.
Sure. So desalination is basically converting, salty water for potable use. And there's two aspects. There's one, it's called brackish. Desalination we call desal. So there's brackish desal, which is basically taking really salty aquifer water that has historically not been usable. And there's also coastal desal, where you're taking the water literally from the ocean, converting it then to potable drinking water.
But that can't be cheap. That's got to be really expensive.
It's very expensive, and it's been part of the issue of why it hasn't been done that much in Texas up to this point, just from the cost standpoint of that. But as the technology advances, things get a little bit cheaper in terms of what can be built, but also, as I said, desperation promotes that necessity where, hey, we've got to find these other solutions. And so that threshold from a political and cost standpoint are starting to merge come down to where the point where both systems are now allowing for desal to be a true option.
So where would you put a desalination plant? Do you have to put it at the coast, or you can put it a little inland? So you could take that water and move it somewhere inland.
Well, again, there's brackish desal that could be done in an aquifer, so it's not necessarily on the coast. But regardless of that, if it's on the coast or even inland, then you still got to move that water from where that facility is located to get it somewhere, just like any other treatment facility.
Yeah, so it's pricey. But that's one solution, at least partial, is desalination. The other is a project called Toilet to Tap, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it's already in use, right? I know Midland, Odessa, this is coming out of West Texas. So I will let you, the engineer in charge here, tell me how Toilet to Tap works and what it is.
Well, first of all, I'd like to, in the industry, we don't like to utilize the phrase toilet to tap because there has a negative stigma associated with it. What we refer to it as is direct potable reuse, which is basically taking, again, your wastewater treatment discharge that has been treated to a very high standard and blending that into your water supply. If you do that directly, that's why it's called direct potable reuse versus indirect, which is going either into a stream or into a lake or being injected back down into the aquifer.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, there's a lot of water. People take long showers. All that water goes somewhere. Why shouldn't we be using that, which is, I guess, what they call gray water? But we should be using gray water and wastewater as well as we can. It shouldn't just go away.
Well, true. And we're certainly are using it in some ways already. And again, we're treating it down to a very high, pure standard that's coming out. But certainly we're using it on golf courses and other ways to try and, find different ways to use the water that just don't need to be necessarily treated to the extent that our drinking water does. But even with our drinking water in Houston, we get in the summer during August, we get 60% of our water from the Trinity River is actually effluent from Dallas. So we're already getting some of that indirect potable reuse happening.
And if it was a problem, we would know about it. If it was, if it was making people sick or it was not working, we would already know about it. It's already had a number of years of use out there in Texas.
Sure. Now we're just talking about what I would say is the stigma of having a direct source from our wastewater treatment facilities being used, but we're going to get over that.
We are, because we're going to have water. So you can get used to anything, as my mom always said. This is a quick question. Speaking of my mom, we always drank out of the tap and the hose when I was a kid. And now you just don't drink water if it's not bottled water. I still do, but so many people are like, I need bottled water. Do you think bottled water has helped or hurt this whole water situation?
I don't think it certainly helped. I mean, by the way, drinking out of the tap is perfectly fine, Frank. It still is to this day. Most bottled water actually comes from public water systems. So in an indirect way, you're getting it regardless of whether you're drinking it out of a bottle or drinking it out of the tap. So when you think of it that way, we still have the public infrastructure issues that drinking from bottled water doesn't solve. Then you lump in the fact that a lot of water needs in Texas from agricultural, industrial, commercial, and residential use. So needing all of that water, really drinking out of bottled, isn't really a solution that's going to help with our water needs.
Yeah. All right. I've been talking to Lance McLeod, Vice President at Half Engineering, about the water shortages that face Texas, especially between now and 2070 as our population grows. I'm going to leave it there for now, unless there's anything you want to add, Lance, to that particular subject.
Just one more item is that we're starting to look at produced water out of processes for the petroleum industry as another potential water source. With fracking, we produce, that's the wastewater from fracking. They produce about 5 to 7 barrels of water to 1 barrel of oil. And if we can harness that water and utilize that as well, it's certainly something to consider. And we'll be looking into that. In the future.
Okay. That is why we have engineers like you to come up with these great ideas and these solutions. Lance McLeod of Half Engineering, thanks for being a friend of Frank, and thanks for being on Hello Houston.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That was engineer Lance McLeod, a water practice leader for the infrastructure consulting firm Half. Thanks so much for listening to the latest edition of Friends of Frank.
And coming up on Hello Houston, April is Donate Life Month. And we are always taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7. Stay with us. If education, the arts, our local government matter to you, then protect it. Public media across the country is facing threats to vital funding, and that includes this station. Here at Houston Public Media, we're holding the line thanks to you. Your support helps shield local programming like this from economic uncertainty and policy shifts. Protect the platform that uplifts Houston's voices right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman here with Ernie Manouse.
Thank you, Celeste. Yes, there are real threats to the funding for public media. And that matters because when funding is threatened, it's people like you and I who keep trusted journalism alive. Please give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And coming up later in the show, we will learn about life-saving organ donation. And this conversation is exactly why this show matters. It adds value, it adds perspective and local insight. And you can't find it anywhere else. If that's worth something to you, take a moment right now. Give at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Did you know Houston Public Media accepts vehicle donations? If you've got a car or truck that you don't need anymore, donate it to our station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars or more in support. Go online to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars for more info.
Support comes from Roco, closing its 20th season with Optimistic, led by Alastair Willis, featuring Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring and Vincent Gardner's Mancini mashup with Jazz Houston, April 26th. More at roco.org.
Should see some sun later today. This is your NPR station, KUHF. Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, April is National Donate Life Month. We'll talk with organ donor Tom O'Driscoll, who explains the importance of organ donation. I'm Frank Billingsley.
I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. Plus, we'll dive into our weekly Current Obsessions, where we all share what we're currently into pop culture-wise. Do you have any current obsessions? Let us know.
And I'm Ernie Manouse. As always, we want to hear from you. Do you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns on any of our topics for any of our guests? Give us a call, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
And remember, you can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org and click that big orange banner.
Hello Houston continues right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Florida State University is telling people to shelter in place as police respond to reports of an active shooter at the Student Union on the Tallahassee campus. Tallahassee Memorial Hospital says it's received several patients from the incident. Italian Prime Minister Meloni is meeting with President Trump at the White House this hour. Ahead of the meeting, Trump praised the U.S.-Italian bond.
We have a very good relationship. Together and as countries, we have a very good relationship.
He also says he expects Italy to work out a trade deal with the U.S. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Meloni, head of the right-wing Brothers of Italy party, was the only leader to attend Trump's inauguration this year. But relations with Europe have been tense after Trump announced 20% tariffs on European imports, which he then reduced to 10% to allow for negotiations to take place. Meloni last visited Trump at his Florida home in January, and she's set to host Vice President J.D. Vance in Italy in the coming days. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News, the White House.
2 federal judges have temporarily blocked the Trump administration from withholding funds for climate and environmental projects. NPR's Michael Copley has more.
Courts are pushing back against the Trump administration's efforts to cut off billions in grant funding that Congress approved during the Biden administration. In Rhode Island, a judge said the funding freeze appears to be unlawful and told the government to restart payments to nonprofits while a lawsuit plays out. And in the District of Columbia, a judge temporarily blocked the Environmental Protection Agency from unlawfully suspending or terminating grant funding. The judges said the EPA hasn't provided evidence of wrongdoing by the grant recipients. The EPA said it's reviewing the ruling. Other agencies named in the Rhode Island case declined to comment or didn't respond to messages seeking comment. Michael Copley, NPR News.
Much of Puerto Rico is still without power after a blackout across the whole island. It's the second such blackout in nearly 4 months. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran reports more than half the utilities customers have had their power restored.
The blackout started at noon on Wednesday and left 1.4 million people in Puerto Rico without electricity. Slow progress has been made. Puerto Rico government officials say they expect 90% of the island to have power again by Friday or Saturday. It's not clear what caused the blackout. The last time the island was in total darkness was on New Year's Eve. Today, roads are chaotic. Gas stations have lines as people scramble to get fuel for generators and ice. Puerto Ricans are continuing to call for the government to cancel the contracts with the companies that oversee the generation and distribution of power. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News, Carolina, Puerto Rico.
Wall Street's trading in mixed territory at this hour. The Dow is down 248 points. The Nasdaq up 41. The S&P 500 up 38. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Firearm possessions at Houston ISD have more than doubled in the last year, according to Superintendent Mike Miles. He shared disciplinary data with the district's Board of Managers during this week's meeting.
We went from 18 possession of firearms at this point last year to 42 at this point this year.
Miles says that's why the district is working on placing weapon detection systems in all high schools. Despite the high number of firearms being brought to schools, he says disciplinary actions across the district is trending down. The number of times a student with the district has been reprimanded is down 20% compared to last year. With Ken Paxton running for the U.S. Senate, the race is on to become the next Texas Attorney General. News 88.7's Andrew Schneider says State Attorney Mays Middleton has made a strong start in his bid for the Republican nomination.
Middleton declared his candidacy on Tuesday, making him the second to declare after former U.S. Attorney John Bash. Political consultant Bill Miller says Middleton has an edge because of his willingness to commit his personal fortune as an oil and gas company owner to the race.
Mays Middleton's very, very wealthy. And unofficially, he said that he'll put up to $25 million of his own money in the race. I have to say, that's a deterrent for other people getting in the race.
Northeast Texas State Senator Brian Hughes told the Houston Chronicle that he is also considering a run. Both Hughes and Middleton's Senate terms end next year. I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
Students and staff at the University of Houston are holding a rally on campus. Supporters say they want to stand up against what they're calling an attack on visa, speech, and research in higher education. The rally is scheduled to start at 1 p.m. at the Butler Plaza near the M.D. Anderson Library. It's 80 degrees with a high near 85 today. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indiana University, establishing the IU Launch Accelerator for Biosciences to drive healthcare discoveries and train the next generation of innovators. More at go.iu.edu/IULab.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
I like how he says my name. And Frank Billingsley.
Well, Celeste just called me Oiny. She's like, Oiny, are we going to do this? I'm like, where'd she come from? Anyway, yes, in case you haven't figured it out, it's Celeste, Frank, and Ernie, and we're all back with you again. Very active day again on the show, talking about SB 2, which, to remind everyone, is the voucher bill, which gets confused with HB 2, which is the funding bill, but I believe they're going to merge up shortly. We're still curious what you think. You heard our conversation with Josh Cowan earlier in the show about vouchers. Give us a call at 713-440-8870 and let us know what you're thinking.
And so this morning, Ernie and Frank, the lower chamber signed off on its voucher proposal, the SB2 voucher proposal, with an 85 to 63 vote. We also just spoke with Josh Cowan, who is a leading expert in vouchers in this space, in the education space. And we're obviously taking your calls. We want to hear from you, your questions, your concerns, or perhaps even a celebration. If you think this is a great move for the state, let us know. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. We have been receiving lots of comments offline. We had Rom Talk said, if the money for vouchers goes to private schools that are affiliated with religious organizations, is that state money funding religious organizations so they don't pay taxes anyway, and the state is giving them free money to support religious organizations? We also had Yvonne from North Houston Houston send in her comment and question. She says, how does this school voucher program affect homeschool programs?
It does. They get it.
They as well.
I don't think they get 10,000, but they do get between 2,000 and 4,000, I think.
And then Michael from the north side said, I'm a sponsor of a family from Nicaragua. Would they qualify for school vouchers? So again, lots of questions, a lot of interest, and because this will affect a lot of people. Anybody that's a taxpayer basically is going to be affected by this. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
You can also email us at talk@hellohouston.org and share your feelings and thoughts. That phone number again, if you want to call in, 713-440-8870. Kit is on the line from Central Houston. Kit, what's on your mind?
Well, I tell you, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right. Two things. First of all, don't drink much water from bottled water because you get plastic poisoning from the container. Look it up. I don't want to go into that.
Yeah.
I'm real incensed about this school voucher program. All you have to do is read the headline of the paper this morning. Cy-Fair ISD is bracing for a setback, and that setback is state funding for their school and also decreased enrollment, but mainly state funding. And I want to have one more comment about that. This is all about Abbott and his wealthy donors. That's the only thing this is about. People that don't vote for vouchers get primaried. They got primaried last time in the state election.
Kit, thank you for your comments on that. And we're inviting you all at 713-440-8870 to share your opinions and thoughts.
Yeah, that echoes what Commissioner Rodney Ellis said just yesterday with us. And the plastic bottle thing, that was not brought up in my conversation with Lance McLeod. I don't want anybody to get the impression that we were against or for plastic bottles. You do what you
I get the feeling, though, Kit has a place
he
to
has
stand
an opinion,
on
but that's just Kit's opinion, not mine or Lance's.
Let's go back to the phone, 713-440-8870. Mark from Sugar Land is with us. Mark, what's on your mind?
Well, I couldn't agree with the previous caller more. Vouchers is just a way for rich people to send their kids to private schools, all at the expense of public schools, using Texans' tax dollars to pay for it. We need to fund our public schools, and anybody that wants to send their kid to a private school can do so with their own money.
Mark, I think that's a pretty common sentiment. As one legislator put it, he said, if you're in a 12-foot hole, a 10-foot rope doesn't really help. And so these vouchers, $10,000, if you can't afford the other $20,000, that's not going to help. What it's going to help are people who can afford the $20,000, and it gives them 10 more. I would suggest that we're going to see an increase in tuition from private schools saying, well, if you could afford the 20 and now you're getting 10 free, let's just go to 30. So you get the 10 free and 20. And wait until the state says, well, what's in your library? We want to know what's in your library because we're helping fund this private school. And do you have any transgender students? We want to know about them. Do you have any undocumented students? We want to know about them. And I think it's a very invasive way for the state to get into private education. And
a slippery slope.
They should stay out of it.
And, as somebody who is in this space right now, right here in Houston, the private school market is already so competitive. It is so competitive. It is already very expensive. And so it's very interesting to also watch on that flip side how that is going to affect people already, because of the situation with HISD. Whenever the state had that intervention or the takeover, we saw people already leaving our public school system within the school district to private school. And now we're basically allowing, it's going to really support the upper middle class that was barely maybe squeezing it. Now they're going to be able to go, and it's just going to cause more disparity.
Let me ask you this. So do you think, because your children go to private.
One goes to private, one goes to public school.
Okay. So do you think, let's say a private school is $30,000. And you're going to send your kid to private for 30 and you get an extra 10. Is there a chance that school would say, we can take this student for 10 only as a lower income scholarship student and only charge them the 10 that they can afford.
Most private schools have scholarship programs.
So this is a possibility.
So most private schools have scholarship programs, on academic, multiple ways that people can apply
I'm just thinking low income
So-
scholarship. Just you can afford the 10, you're going to get the 10, you deserve to come to our school for whatever reason. We're going to let you come for 10 and yours and Celeste's kid comes for basically 20 because he also gets another 10.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, isn't that a fairer way to do this?
Mark, thank you for sparking more conversation here with us.
I know, I have an opinion.
Frank has an opinion. 713-440-8870. Ann is on the line now from the Med Center. Ann, what are you thinking about all this?
I agree with we should not have our tax dollars funding the education vouchers because others can pay for it in these private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And our money, we should also be able to vote on this as for our tax dollars, whether we want it or not.
I don't think it would pass, do you, Ann?
Pardon?
Do you think it would pass?
I don't think it would pass. I think a lot of people are against having our tax dollars used this way.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for calling and sharing your thoughts with us at 713-440-8870. The one point that I want to bring into all of this is that our public schools, if I am correct on this, are set up so the public has access to education and the government supports this ability to publicly educate all of our students. Private schools are an additional object, an additional being that's out there if you choose to not be in the public school system. But that doesn't put the support back on the general public to support offshoots of the concept of us having. It's kind of like we have a U.S. Postal Service which serves everyone. If you choose to send your stuff through FedEx or UPS, you're fine to do it. But the government is funding the public mail. We fund the public school systems. That's the public in it. Thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you. And I also want to say that there were amendments that tried to say if you're a family of four making over $156,000, you can't get a voucher. And that didn't work. But there were attempts to say, okay, if we're going to do these vouchers, really rich people can't have them. And they're really, and on the other side, if you make under $62,500 as a family of four, you are qualifying. So there was a lot of play with exactly how rich you could or could not be.
Eligibility.
But I think, yes, eligibility. But I think it's for anybody now.
Right. And one more point to that is that private school tuition is one thing, but you also have to pay for books. You also have to pay for uniforms if you want to be in extracurriculars. It is.
We continue to
and
be.
You still pay taxes for education for schools you may not support because they're public schools.
We continue to be interested in your thoughts on this topic at 713-440-8870. A couple other things going on. One thing that caught our attention was the Houston City Council I'm having trouble reading. Houston City Council unanimously approved an ordinance Wednesday regulating short-term rentals such as those listed on Airbnb and Vrbo. The ordinance would require owners and or operators to register properties with the city for a fee of $275. It also provides criteria for the revoking of registrations, including instances of renters committing certain crimes and reckless discharge of firearms, disorderly conduct, prostitution, and multiple violations to city ordinances. Should cities be getting involved in the Airbnb and Vrbo stuff, the short-term rentals? What do you think? 713-440-8870. Celeste, Frank, what do you think?
There needs to be regulation.
Agreed.
Yes.
Oh, that was short. Thank you.
I don't have one. But there absolutely should be.
There should be, regulation.
But is it going too far? Here, I'm going to take the opposite on this one and say it's your property. Do with it what you wish.
No.
Maybe you can have regulations around it, but you have to charge $275. So I can rent a property that I already pay taxes on, that I've already bought, that is my property. Don't I have the right to invite whoever I want into my home?
Yes, but you have to have some sort of public good going on. You can't have people
Why?
that are committing crimes, or somebody comes in
All right,
and has
but
a
that's
meth
different.
lab. And,
Yes, that's breaking laws. You're not
Right.
allowed to do those anyway. Why the $275?
Because it's also making you think, if I'm going to have to pay for this, I want to make sure that the people that I am renting it out to are responsible, that they're not going to throw parties, that they're not going to have damage to our property, they're not going to park all of their cars in our street and block driveways. And so it's basically.
But all of those things are laws that already exist. You can't have disturbances. You can't block public spaces. You can't have illegal, illicit activity going in your home. So if you just use the laws we already have, and the funny thing is, I don't know if I'm for or against this right now, but I'm certainly coming out in one direction. But I'm just curious, that's adding more burden on people that are trying to make ends meet in some way. You got a spare room, you got a spare house, rent it if you want. Why does it have to have a fee to it?
Well, we want to hear from you. Give us a call. Why does it have to have a fee on it? 713-440-8870.
That's my thoughts right now.
And coming up on Hello Houston, we talked to organ donor Tom O'Driscoll about Donate Life Month and what that means. And we're also taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7. The story you just heard was made right here in Houston. It was not imported, not syndicated. Right now, funding sources for public media are under threat. And it's important to remember Houston Public Media is built on something so much stronger, and that is community. And you are a part of our community, and that means you. Hello Houston lifts up local voices, perspectives, stories, and conversations so you can stay connected to your community. But we rely on your support. Support your platform for Houston's voice right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate, or give us a call, 888-909-0887. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman, here with Ernie Manouse.
Even you stumbled over at that time.
I almost said my maiden last name.
I know. Every time you tune in, you hear something new, something surprising, something real. We don't tell you what to think. We bring you a range of perspectives and let you decide. And that's very rare in the media today. It's also very powerful, and that's worth protecting. So give right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Every show is different, just like Houston. Today we're covering education. That's in the legislation right now. We're also going to be talking about organ donation. Frank spoke about water. And tomorrow, who knows? That variety, that relevance, it's all made possible by you. Be part of keeping Hello Houston going strong. Please give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or pick up the phone, 888-909-0887.
Still thinking about it? Let's do this together. Support well-researched, honest reporting right here in Greater Houston. Show you care about keeping truth on the air. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
This is community-powered news. About 80% of our funding comes directly from our community. People like you who value facts and take action to support them. That means your role is essential. Help keep this newsroom running strong. And that is the key, strong. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And to everyone that's already given, thank you. You're the reason that this station stays strong. And if you've been meaning to give a little more, now is a great time to do that too. That extra $20 or $50 helps push us forward, help funds the programming you enjoy, the information you gather, and the things you glean from our conversations. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
There are threats to funding for public media on the national level. Your support now shows that our community believes in independent journalism, no matter what happens. This newsroom stays strong when you step up. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or good old way, 888-909-0887.
You know, monthly donors are the reasons that we can plan ahead. Right now, is the time to act. Not later, not tomorrow. Do it right now while you're thinking about it. Make your gift in this moment while you're listening. That's twice the impact for fact-based news. Start your monthly gift today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And during major storms and emergency, we stay on air. We are here for you. So be part of that mission at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
It can be hard to stay informed about what's happening in our city, our state, and across the country. That's why Houston Public Media makes it easier.
Everything you hear on News 88.7 is powered by you, not advertisers. 80% of our funding comes from our Houston community.
That's what makes public media different. It's community funded and always here for you when you need it.
Join that community now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply. Support comes from Pearland, Texas, a community with a variety of living options, from new construction, mature neighborhoods, and urban living, designed for any lifestyle. More at pearlandedc.com/inspiration. Pearland, inspiration lives here.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Holdsworth Center's Champions of Hope series, featuring 6 Texas education leaders who are uplifting their communities and leading with heart. More about their stories at holdsworthcenter.org.
Support comes from Elmore, communicating with clarity and inspiration, collaborating with executive leadership to create expert internal and external communication strategy. Elmore, listen, clarify, communicate. More at elmorepr.com. Support comes from the Houston Zoo, presenting its annual Feast with the Beasts. Cuisine from a number of Houston's diverse eateries, animal experiences, live music, and more. May 2nd. More at houstonzoo.org. Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit exploring understanding and friendship, where kids discover that while faiths and beliefs may differ, kindness and friendship are universal. More at cmhouston.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back to Hello Houston. April is recognized as Donate Life Month, a time to bring awareness to the need of organ donations, but also honor those who have so generously donated an organ. I personally know someone who selflessly went through the process of donating his kidney when a friend was in need. And although the process can seem complex to make that decision, the person who is in need of an organ, their life depends on it. There are more than 100,000 people currently waiting for transplants in the U.S., according to the Donate Life America. And today we are joined by Tom O'Driscoll, a double altruistic organ donor. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
So,
Thank you.
Tom, right off the bat, how did you hear? What kind of gave you the idea? I think I want to donate an organ.
Well, believe it or not, it started with a program on NPR.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So if anyone can say that NPR changed their life, I can. It was a program on This American Life, and they had a story called The 10 Commandments. And for the 9th commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not lie, they had a story of an Orthodox Jewish woman in Brooklyn named Chaya Lipschutz, and how she wanted to donate one of her kidneys to a stranger in her community. But to do so, she felt she had to lie to her mother. She didn't want to tell her mother beforehand because she thought her mother would be upset and maybe not allow her to do it, that sort of thing. So she lied about it, broke the 9th commandment to do this mitzvah, which in Hebrew is a word that means a good deed, an action pleasing to God. The story was wonderful. It made me laugh, and it was just a wonderful story, and it really stuck with me. And Chaya has basically devoted her life to encouraging people to be organ donors. She has a website called Kidney Mitzvah. And I reached out to her through that website. We started a conversation. She educated me terrifically about how to go about it and what it means. And in 2010, I donated my left kidney to a stranger.
Wow. You know, what's interesting in that is people love the idea of organ donation, but there's a disparity for those who support the idea and those who actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that disparity exists?
Wow, that's a great question. It's really fascinating. There is a researcher at Georgetown who believes that the reason why we do altruistic things is because of our amygdala. And if you have a highly developed amygdala in your brain, you're very empathetic to people. If you have a diseased amygdala, you might be a sociopath.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
You know, I always heard that to be an organ donor is humane. Not to want to be an organ donor is human. That's the difference. Yeah. But there are people who are like, well, it's a great idea, but gosh, I want to be buried whole. And in fact, there's some religions that believe you should be buried in whole.
Right. You know, that's very true. I'm Catholic, and I know Pope Francis has said that donating an organ is an act of love for a neighbor. And I think everyone would agree with that.
I agree with that.
But you're a double altruistic organ donor. So when we say double, let's talk about
what else are you missing? Do you got anything I can use?
I'm spent. I'm all done. No, but it's fascinating. I stayed good friends with Chaya. In fact, I spoke with her just 2 nights ago, and her NPR program is going to be repeated on This American Life shortly. She was very excited. She was telling me about that. But about 10 years ago, I started to notice on her website that she talked about not only kidney donation, but kidney and liver donation. And I spoke to her and I said, you can't donate a liver.
No.
You die without a liver. She educated me and said the liver is unique among our internal organs in that it has the ability to regenerate. And so a healthy adult can donate up to 65% of their liver. And within 2 months, that liver is back to normal size and doing its function.
Really?
The human body is amazing in that regard. It's like a starfish arm. It regrows.
Yeah, the prostate could do that too. Although nobody wants mine, I can assure you of that. So what do you? Let's talk about opt-in versus opt-out, because we're an opt-in country. You have to opt in to be a donor, whereas a lot of countries are opt out. You're automatically considered to be a donor. In fact, it's on your driver's license if you don't want to be a donor. Right. I mean, otherwise you're a donor.
Right.
So a lot of countries have the opt-out program. So why are we not that country where we're automatically a donor?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I know from a personal standpoint, I think I like the idea of opting in. And right now, about 60% of all Americans do opt in to be organ donors. But there's something that's very, very interesting about that. End of life, organ donations come in 2 forms, end of life and living. End of life donations will never solve the organ crisis. There will never be enough of them.
Because you have to harvest them so quickly?
The reason is, and not to put too fine a point on it, you have to die in a very particular way, and that just doesn't happen enough. So even if 100% of all Americans were end of life donors, we would not make a dent.
Wow.
In getting organs to those 100,000 Americans that need them.
But to our earlier point, I mean, if you're talking about a heart or a lot of organs, it has to be an end of life donation.
Sure. Yes.
So that's really the only choice.
Can't give your heart before.
Well, but I remember when the AIDS crisis was at its peak. There was there were people who were getting organs from people who didn't know they had HIV, and they were getting HIV because of that organ. But that's been solved.
Right. No one donates an organ without being extensively tested. There are about 250 hospitals in the United States that perform transplants. All of them run their own programs of testing someone to be a living organ donor. And this is very interesting. In addition to getting tons of screens and blood tests and all that sort of thing, what other type of doctor do you see if you want to be a living organ donor?
Eye doctor?
Psychiatrist.
Oh, well. Yeah, that's a good doctor.
They will have a psychiatrist interview you and say, Tell us why you want to do this, and make sure that it's for the right reasons.
Do they check back with like members of your family? I mean, like if I wanted to do it, would they ask my husband, "Is this okay with you?"
They did not in my case. No one contacted any of my family, which was good because unlike Chaya, I didn't lie to my family, but I didn't tell them that I was going to make sure.
Interesting.
And we want to remind everybody, you're listening to Hello Houston. We're speaking with Tom O'Driscoll, who's a double altruistic organ donor. And you can always join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
Tom, technology is all around us, yet whenever I think of organ donations, I'm still seeing those igloo coolers. Have we advanced in portable organ preservation devices, or are we still just throwing them in with the ice and moving them in a cooler?
Yeah, my understanding is that's pretty much how they're transported.
That blows my mind.
It is. It really is amazing. You talk about technology, Ernie, and one of the things to keep in mind, and we've heard a lot about it, NPR has had stories on us, of xenotransplantation. Animal organs, specifically pig organs that have been bred for kidney donors. And my understanding, I'm not an expert on this by any means, is that it will always be kind of a middle step. Someone goes into kidney failure, they go on dialysis. Dialysis keeps them alive, but it's very, very hard on their body. My kidney recipient told me that after she would have a dialysis treatment, she felt like she'd run a marathon. Just wipes her out. It is not hyperbole to say that dialysis centers are temples of despair. It's a very, very hard life to be on dialysis. Xenotransplantation, an animal organ, will never be as good as a human kidney. And my understanding is there's a difference because of blood pressure and how long the organ will last. A living organ donation lasts twice as long as a deceased organ donation for obvious reasons. When I donated my kidney to my recipient, I actually asked the surgeon to take a photo of it. And at that time, there weren't iPhones, so he just gave me later a copy of the photo. When I went to see my recipient in the hospital, her nurse looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, what a beautiful organ." Oh, no. And I thought she was being funny. And she said, no, she said, "I used to be an operating room nurse, and I could tell that that's a living organ because it's pink, it's healthy looking. You get a deceased organ that come in, it does not look the same." And that's why living organ donors, someone with a living organ donation can use that organ twice as long as a deceased organ.
Sometimes you hear about people getting another person's organ and they take on those characteristics of that person. Like, "Oh, no, I love the color blue. I never liked the color blue until I got your kidney."
Is there any truth to that?
Any truth to that in your case?
Not in my experience.
Not in your experience?
Not in my experience.
Tom, where is the greatest need when it comes to organ donation?
Definitely in the area of kidneys. And as you said, Celeste, there's about 100,000 Americans on the organ waiting list. About 90,000 of those are for kidneys. And I'm part of an organization that we're trying to address that problem with a piece of legislation that has recently been introduced into the House Ways and Means Committee, H.R. 2678, called the End Kidney Deaths Act. And basically what we're trying to do, it's not without controversy, is to compensate someone for donating their kidney to a stranger through a refundable tax credit that they can take in sums over 5 years. There is one country in the world where you can legally sell your kidney. Do y'all know what country that might be?
No. I don't even want to guess.
I know.
Of all places, it's Iran. You can legally sell your kidney in Iran. What is their wait list for a kidney in Iran?
Oh, Lord, 200,000? Zero.
Zero.
Because people are
zero.
motivated.
Yeah.
Can we here sell our kidneys to Iran?
Absolutely not. So each donation that I did, I had to sign something saying I'm not receiving any valuable consideration for my organ.
The movie Como, remember Como?
Yeah, exactly. But what we're trying to do through the End Kidney Deaths Act is to create a means by which you would encourage more donation, but do it in a non-exploitative way. And we think a refundable 5-year tax credit is exactly the way to do that.
We're having a fascinating conversation here about organ donation. We'd love to hear what you think at 713-440-8870. We have Michael on the line from Galleria. Michael, what are you thinking about all this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having this conversation. It's so vital and important. I'm privileged that 10 years and nearly 5 months ago, I received a liver donation.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think about it every day, sometimes several times a day. I'm a Vietnam vet, and many of us came home with hepatitis C. And over the years, obviously, the virus impacted my liver, but I'm fortunate to have lived in Houston, where we have such great access to medical care.
Nice.
Michael, great story, and thanks for sharing with us. If you have a comment and you want to share, 713-440-8870. Okay, bioengineering. What about growing organs for this? Where are we in all of that?
Yeah, I know very little about that. And with all those type of things, xenotransplantation, bioengineering, you always hear the same number. 10 years out, we'll be doing it. And then 10 years go by.
Right,
10 years out, we'll be doing it. And it seems to be getting much closer with making xenotransplantation a real thing. But again, it's never going to be as good as a living organ donation. It can't be.
No. I mean, you can make things with a 3D printer. We had a guest that in high school was making prosthetics with a 3D printer.
Right.
But you really can't make an organ.
Yeah.
At least not yet.
I also am curious about demographic inequalities in this, from who gives and who receives. Is it the rich get richer and the poor get poorer in this area?
There's no doubt about it that the people who get an organ are typically more affluent than people who don't. And it's very, very sad in
but
that
could it
regard.
be the more affluent, as uncomfortable as they are, healthier, have had better medical care, so they are a better odds of doing well from being
I think that's a fair point. It is interesting to note, though, 2 years ago, Representative Donald Payne, a Democratic member of Congress from New Jersey, he died on the kidney waiting list. This is a member of the House of Representatives, and he died waiting for a kidney. He was going to be, in fact, one of our co-sponsors of the End Kidney Deaths Act. So it can happen to someone who is powerful. It can happen to someone who has no power at all.
Is it a blind list? So you don't know who's in need. You just know physically they are most able to continue a longer life if they get this organ.
That's exactly right. So there is an organization called UNOS, United Network for Organ Sharing, and they manage what's called the OPTIN, Organ Procurement and Transportation Network in the United States, and they maintain the lists. And people get on the list, and your number whatever, and your number this. But I've forgotten now. The average wait is years for a kidney.
We have about 30 seconds. If you want to get on the list, where do you go?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about being a living organ donor, I'd say the first place to go to is Donate Life America. Their website has wonderful information about doing that. If you want to speak with someone who's done it, look me up on Facebook. I'm the only Tom O'Driscoll from Sugar Land, Texas. I would be very happy to speak with anyone that would want to be a donor.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom O'Driscoll is a double altruistic organ donor. Tom, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Coming up on Hello Houston, myself, Ernie, and Frank will share our current obsessions, and we can't wait to hear all about yours. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Stay with us. Every weekday, we slow down and listen. Whether we're spotlighting the latest show at the Hobby Center, important legislation in Austin, it all impacts your life. Or we might be hearing from someone like Tom, who we just heard from, who's making a difference. Hello Houston is here to connect you to our community, and your support makes it possible. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Well, here are some of the comments that we're getting from our members, Celeste. Quote, in today's age of misinformation, NPR remains a main source of news for me. And thank you for your service to the community. Clear, concise, and truthful journalism is key to ensuring a strong community. That is so impactful, and thank you for leaving those comments for us. And that's why Houston Public Media is here. Make your gift now and let us know why you support Houston Public Media at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
A free press is essential to a strong democracy. If you give $1,200 or you might only give $100 a month, you'll become part of our Studio Society. That is a powerful way to counter misinformation and uplift our community. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Here's another thing you could do, which is so impactful. Become a monthly donor. That recurring gift protects your access to free local news and programming for the months and the years ahead. And it helps us rely less on outside funding. So join now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
We love bringing you conversations that are relevant, that are real and rooted in this city. And that's what Hello Houston does. That's what makes it different. If you've ever thought, I'm really glad I heard that, or that impacted my life or my day, this is your moment to give back right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And if you've never given before, this is the moment to join in. We're here today because others stepped up. And now it's your turn. Protect your access to fact-based reporting. Please give at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate. That's houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call us 888-909-0887. Thank you.
I'm News 88.7 afternoon anchor Gail DeLauder. Some of the things I look for when I'm preparing a local newscast is what are the big things people need to know right now? What's happening right now? What's going on? Where those stories are evolving? Where we think they're going to need to go? Also, when I'm preparing a newscast, I want to present information in the most accurate and understandable way, rewriting stories, clearing up language, and just making sure that things are easy for people to understand and we can really convey what's going on in an understandable way. You have the right to know what's happening, not just the news headlines, but the context that helps you understand what every story means for you and your community. Houston Public Media makes that possible, bringing you independent news that's always free. No paywalls, no barriers, just facts. Your support helps protect your access to well-researched reporting. Support your right to stay informed by giving at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Houston Grand Opera, presenting Wagner's Tannhäuser in a production featuring tenor Russell Thomas on stage at Wortham Theater, April 25th through May 11th. Tickets are available at hgo.org.
Support comes from the Near Northwest Management District, located just off 290 and the 610 Loop, with a mixture of modern and mid-century homes and businesses. More information at nnmd.org, at the intersection of innovation.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com. Support comes from the Inspirity Invitational, presented by United Healthcare, bringing the legends of the PGA Tour champions to the Woodlands Country Club tournament course, April 28th to May 4th. More information at inspirityinvitational.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back.
We are back. Here we go. So, we always invite your thoughts and comments on the things we're talking about of the day. In our at the top of the hour, we happen to be talking about topics, and one that came up was Airbnbs and the new regulations.
Them, paying $275.
And surprise, surprise, people had reactions.
Yeah.
And it seems like most to what I said, which, before I get into them, are just the offering the alternate point of
Oh,
view.
you're playing devil's advocate? Is that
always. If you ever have listened to me on the air, you always know.
Well,
I'm,
the devil's
I'm trying
here,
to find
so.
it. Well, we're going to see. Yes. Okay, so we had, and this was at talk@hellohouston.org. We got an email came in that said, I just want to address some of Ernie's absolutely insane comments regarding the registration and regulation of short-term rentals. First, it's not that you're inviting people to your house and you're allowed to invite whoever you want. You are conducting a business transaction. You are charging money for them to stay in your house. We should definitely be regulating businesses. And second, and the most insane, Ernie said, and okay, before I get to it, even when it came out of my mouth, I thought to myself, that's not exactly what I mean to say, but I'm in the moment. I'm saying
Okay,
it. Here
say
we
it,
go.
say it.
What I said, Ernie said, what if you're trying to make ends meet and you have an extra house? Yes, I heard that when I said it. Please tell me you're not serious. It's not that I wasn't serious. It was that I wasn't formulating it or using the words I meant. But to continue, in no world is someone who owns more than one house struggling to make ends meet. I'm
She's right.
thinking on
She's
that.
right.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe you inherited a house and you can't afford it. Anyway,
You sell it.
Wow, he's digging it.
You
deep.
really-
if there, you should sell that extra house. The $275 registration fee is not the problem. Short-term rentals are one of many reasons we have a pinch in the housing market nationwide. Regulation is the minimum. We should really consider prohibiting the service. And that was from Lisa. Lisa, thank you for your thoughts and comments on there.
You want to take a call?
Let's also take a call. We have Carol on the line. She called us at 713-440-8870. Carol for Spring, talk to me.
Yes, unless I misunderstood the whole thing, as I understood it, that there was being a charge made to the homeowner so that he or she would not rent a room or rent their house to someone that had a problem with the law, that they were and had been incarcerated or had. Did I misunderstand that?
My understanding of what we were sharing with you was that there is a fee. They want to put on a fee to whoever wants to participate in a home share program, an Airbnb or Vrbo, where then they have to be registered to be one of those. I'll use the term
But
loosely.
also
landlord.
part of that is that if a crime is committed, any kind of crime, whether it's just loud noise, more than twice, then they can shut you down. So they are going to run it more like a business and say, look, you're not going to let these crimes occur at your Airbnb. And if you do, we're going to shut your ability to do this down.
Right.
So you kind of understood it right, I think. Yeah.
And my point was to try and look at this from a different point of view in that, you can regulate things, but the point is the laws that they're talking about already exist. You can't be doing these things, whether it's you, whether it's guests in your home, whether it's someone you're renting to. It's breaking existing laws was the point I was trying to make. Lacking eloquence when I did say it.
You're all right.
So, Carol, anything more on this for us?
No, I think I misunderstood a bit then. It's fine. I thought that.
Thank you, Carol.
Carol, thanks for calling.
When people call me or send me messages, I'm going to say, Carol thinks she got it and she understands where I was coming from. Thank you.
Obsessions.
Remember, if you have any comments on any of today's questions, thoughts, concerns, give us a call, 713-440-8870, or with your obsessions.
That's right. Ernie and Frank mentioned it's time to dive into our current obsessions, that thing you just can't get enough of, or you want more of it, a TV show, that song that's on repeat on Spotify. But before we jump into our current obsessions this week, one of the top trending items right now on X is that Elon Musk has 14 kids. One of the other top trending items is the Blue Origin Gayle King's reaction when she rang Katy Perry. But before we get into our interest, you are welcome to share your current obsession, 713-440-8870.
Nice. Okay. Have you seen this? And I bought this myself on Amazon, right? You see that? Because you eat protein bars.
Yes.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see what Frank is holding up.
You know who's Mosh Bar? Who does this?
No.
Patrick Schwarzenegger and his mom, Maria Shriver, and benefits Alzheimer's research.
Oh, that's
great. That is great.
And I'll tell you, Kevin found it a little dry. But I liked it. I'm going to eat it as soon as we're done here. This is a peanut butter chocolate crunch mosh bar, M-O-S-H. I got it off Amazon. Wasn't really cheap. I bought one box, so
So that's your obsession.
You didn't bring
You're
us
obsessed
one
with
to
them?
try?
That was too expensive to bring you one.
Too expensive to share with us.
I'm not a sharer. Leave my coffee alone.
Not
This is
surprised.
my water, my coffee, my
I have a
phone.
new obsession. People who don't like to share. No, I had different obsessions. Listen, because I've always got a lot of obsessions going on. And then I looked at the calendar and I realized what my true obsession is right now, because I
What?
can't talk about it next week. The Ten Commandments, the Cecil B. DeMille film from back in the 1950s.
Of only two are only relevant anymore.
Oh, my. 1956. If you don't know... What?
Come
Only
on,
two
two.
are relevant. It's the Ten Commandments.
Well,
it's
8 of
not
them
about
don't.
religion. It's not about where you fall and all of it. It's about the movie itself. A cinematic masterpiece and camp classic all at the same time.
I do like the movie.
I have
I
a
do
screening every year at my house. I invite my friends to come over and watch this. We do it on Easter Eve. Sometimes we're competing with ABC when they're airing it, but we started at 6, and it's amazing how few of my friends make it to the end of 4 hours in whatever length it is. Love the movie, love the performances, love learning more and more about it every year.
Your turn.
So, as a mom of young kids, wife working, I don't have a great obsession, but I do have an obsession with my toothbrush. I bought a charcoal. I bought a charcoal infused. The bristles are black, and it's supposed to be. I feel like my teeth have never been so white and never been so clean.
Do you use
Really?
charcoal toothpaste too? That's the one that
No.
freaks me out.
I'm going
the
to get
black
Kevin that.
toothpaste.
Kevin, we have dental tools in our house.
Dental
Oh.
I mean,
tools.
tools. Those like things that your
Yes, like the-
hygienist use.
yep.
Kevin's never had a cavity, I don't think.
Really? My mom's never had a cavity.
I mean,
I've had-
maybe one or two.
I've
but
had
not-
one
Very
ton.
few.
I did not get the good genes in that regard. And then my other obsession, and I'm really, really embarrassed about this,
Oh, let's hear it.
is on Instagram. I really like watching people get their face lasered. It's like it's called
Kevin did that
Miracle
2 days ago. Yes.
And I'm sure he's thrilled you're sharing that.
He looked like he had been in the sun for
Yes.
4 hours.
Yes, and they do it in patterns, and it literally it's like zzz.
But he looks great today.
and
Actually, he really feels
It
good
looks
about
beautiful,
it.
and I love watching the before and the after, and now that's all that comes up on my Instagram. And so I open my Instagram like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to see that, but
You're on the algorithm.
no.
Okay, I got another obsession
You
here.
got 30 seconds
All
to tell
right,
us
talking
about
about great care. I'm obsessed with Knots Landing right now. That spin-off from Dallas. It was on
Oh,
in
yeah, I
the
remember
80s
Knots
into
Landing.
the 90s.
Never seen
14
it.
seasons of it. The big breakout star, of course, was Donna Mills. She's in her 80s now. Check her out on Instagram, the Donna Mills. She looks the same as she did 40 years ago. It is insane.
My favorite
She
quote.
probably gets laser.
My favorite quote, you better go home and practice seeing things my way.
And that's a wonderful place to wrap.
That's right. And like Ernie said, that's a wrap of our current obsessions for the week. But we are always taking yours all week long. Just put current obsessions in the subject line and email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And we want to thank you for listening and watching Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is
Bye.
News 88.7. Adios.
Bye.
Everything you hear on Hello Houston is for you, your interest and what you want to hear about. But it's only possible because you support it. Public media funding is at risk, not just from one place, but from all over. Cuts at the national level and economic pressures are making it harder to sustain independent journalism. But Houston Public Media, it's different. We're different. We're funded mostly by you, and that's why this moment matters. Now is the time to stand strong for local programming. Support it right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman here with Ernie Manouse.
Here are some more comments that we're getting from our members. Really appreciate 88.7 News and local coverage. Or another one. I've been a fan of NPR since listening in my car with my parents during various road trips. In today's age of misinformation, NPR remains a main source of news for me. I actually woke up to news reports from Houston Public Media. Yep, that's why Houston Public Media is here. We're here for you. So give right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888 888-909-0887.
And those are such impactful and meaningful comments, but they're also powerful. And that's why this station is powered by you. If you're listening right now, it's because others have already made their gift. It's your turn. Give right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Your investment helps us remain community-centric. Because of you, we're responsive to what's happening in Houston. Haven't given before? This is the moment. It's easy, it's quick, and you can make it now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate, or simply, as Celeste calls it, the old-fashioned way, give us a call, 888-909-0887. And thank you to everyone who's already given.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the